hustling, by doing the only thing I knew how to do, doors opened for me that I couldn't have otherwise imagined.
While other people are focused on impressing each other, people like me are winning on LinkedIn. Why? Because it's all about connecting.
I couldn't breathe if I wasn't an entrepreneur.
Welcome to the Startup Gambit, presented by Haste and Hustle. I'm SHAUNA Aanikh, CEO of Haste and Hustle.
And I'm DEVON, COO of Haste and Hustle. And today we are joined by two guests today. Pretty excited. We're joined by Swish Goswami and Aanikh Kler. Swish is the CEO and co-founder of Surf. Aanikh is COO of Surf. And guys, this is really cool. I'm glad that you're both here. We've got double today. Before we jump in, we'll hear a quick word from our sponsor, Meridian Credit Union.
What if I'm not ready?
What if I don't have all the answers?
What if I just keep going?
What if it doesn't go as expected?
What if this setback helps me see the bigger picture?
What if I realize how far I've come?
What if I remember I'm doing the best I can with what I've got?
Today, I'm ready for what if.
Get ready for what if. Meridian, where banking feels good.
Swish, we've had a little bit of email correspondence back and forth. Been looking forward to virtually meet you in person. Aanikh, likewise. How's it going, guys? SHAUNA, what's up? Let's jump right into it, guys.
I love it. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you here. I've been starting this new feature for Haste and Hustle, and we're featuring long-term community members. And Swish, I think you're one of the longest-term community members.
OG. I was watching you on stage, and I was like, "This is dope. This is great."
Well, even before that, he was a guest at our very first one. Gary actually had invited him somehow, and anyway, so it was cool to remember that and have you. And so I've been working on that feature, and I was thinking about you, and I'm like, oh, I got to feature Swish at some point. So it's cool to have you here, Aanikh. It's always a pleasure to see you. So I would love, I mean, I don't think I could ever do justice, sharing your stories. And so I'd love for you both to take a few minutes just to share a little bit about who you are, how you got to where you're at currently and what you're working on, whatever you'd like to share. Feel free to just take the stage now and share with our guests, our listeners, a little bit about yourselves.
Sure. Aanikh, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. My background is, born in Vancouver, Canada. So, proud Canadian. Really got started in entrepreneurship and tech when I was 14, built my first app, ended up going on Dragon's Den. For American listeners, that's the Canadian version of Shark Tank. Went on the show when I was 14, got funding from one of the dragons, and the app that I built on the show ended up being number 2 on the iTunes store in Canada. So that was really cool. 10 cents on every download went to Free the Children. And I as well ended up building or supporting a school in the Delhi slums for about 5 years with school supplies. So really kind of focused on social entrepreneurship in the early days. And I think that's kind of carried over even to what we're doing now. Past that, the reason I mention all that is because it's how I ended up meeting Swish. We both won Canada's Top 20 Under 20, 2015. He obviously was finishing up high school. I was in 11th grade. And then, my journey is Swish and I stayed in touch a little bit back and forth, but I finished up high school, went to Stanford. At Stanford, I was studying management sciences and engineering with a focus in data science. Got some really cool internships kind of in between, got to work at Dapper Labs. But back then it was actually called Axiom Zen. For those of you who don't know, Dapper Labs is like a multi-billion-dollar crypto company that does stuff with the NBA and the UFC and La Liga. So that was really cool. And then, about 3 and a bit years ago, Swish and I reconnected. He had the original idea for Surf based on his extensive and dope background. And we've just been kind of jamming and working on it ever since, but definitely most excited and most, excited is the best way to put it in terms of where the business is going right now and kind of what we've created.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I was able to meet Aanikh at that event, Top 20 in Toronto, is because I was debating in high school a lot. So I was on the national team for debate. I'd done it since I was in grade 7. My brother also was a debater as well. He's 4.5 years older than me. So it was kind of within the family, if you know what I mean. And the only person we would ever lose to, candidly, and we still, is our mom. That was pretty much it. But at the same time, we did fairly well in debate. I thought, oh, wow, this would be an awesome opportunity to meet some like-minded people. And Aanikh, was that person for me. He was my roommate at the event. He was like my best friend pretty much for that whole week. We hung out nonstop. And it was really cool to be able to then reconnect with them a few years later when I was in college. I wanted to be a lawyer, but I still, decided to think about entrepreneurship a little bit on the side. And that led me to, after second year, taking an internship at a VC called JB Fitzgerald, and then being a part of a business called Dunk. So Elliot Robinson, who was my roommate in New York, we became business partners for a year and a half. We ended up actually going and building out a massive Instagram account and started working with brands like Warner Music and Gatorade and 2K to promote their content on our channels. And that taught me a lot about influencer marketing, taught me a lot of building a community from a grassroots level up, which not only helped me in my personal brand, but obviously gave me kind of the original inspiration for surf. And that's where, I called up Aanikh. He was at Stanford, told him a little bit about the idea, and he decided to pursue it full time along with me. And it's been an amazing ride over the last 3.5 years.
That's incredible. Well, I feel like, whoever organizes and plans that event should have some stake in what you guys are doing.
That was the catalyst.
I'm just kidding. If that was the case for event planners, I'd be way more wealthy than I am now.
It's actually funny because that top 20 or 20 event had been going on for several years before, but we were the last cohort, 2015.
Oh, really?
And Canada shut it down right after.
Oh, no. They're like, it's because they achieved the pinnacle of their success.
They peaked. Yeah,
we were like, we could never recreate this. We brought the best together. You guys are on your way. Well, it's funny because when I first met you, Swish, and even when I first met you too, I was so impressed by both of you. And you were so young and so driven. And I just remember thinking, I think I was probably 39 or so at the time, and I was like, how did they get to have this drive at such a young age? And, to me, and it actually helped me to reconsider any kind of preconceived notions I had about young people, right? Not that I had any crazy things that I thought, but it actually made me, sort of defend, because you hear all these negative stereotypes about young people not working, all the stuff, and I'm like, no, I know plenty that are just take the cake. And so I'd love to just sort of have you chat a little bit about where you felt like that success and that drive for success and to do great work, even what you did as part of social impact in Delhi there. How did you develop that at such a young age, and sort of what drove you to it?
Aanikh?
I definitely think there's a lot of similarities between Swish and I's answer. I think for me, it was just upbringing. I guess the hyper thing that's unique for me is I'm born with a physical deformity. I don't even know what the appropriate medical term is on my hands. So my right hand is not normal looking whatsoever. I don't know how else to describe it, to be honest. A nicer way to say it, but my left hand is normal looking, but I'm missing a finger. Same thing on my right hand. So I think for me, I grew up with a lot of whether it be doctors or people that I met, having a very clear assumption of what I was capable of doing when I first met them. And I just hated that. It was how can you play sports? How can you type on the computer? How can you write? And I was just well, I never saw it as a disability. I always saw it something that enabled. So I played sports my whole life, still do. But I think that's maybe part of where I'm a hyper competitive person. I think maybe that's where a slight chip on the shoulder came from, is that people just assumed I wouldn't be good at things. And I naturally always wanted to be better than people at stuff, but that also made me feel even more, determined to do it. And then on the flip side, I'm actually very thankful. I say all of that because I could have very easily turned into a monster. But I have an extremely loving mother that I think fostered that type of attitude in a really great way. Obviously, there's a lot more personal development and learning that I need to do. I'm only 24, but I think she took a lot of that energy and put it in ways that were productive and happy and healthy, and grew up with this mentality of you always have to give back. You're very blessed, you're very privileged. And I think I feel extremely blessed and privileged. So it was always take what you have and what you've been given, work really hard, but always find a way to kind of give back. So I think that's really where the drive came to want to create something special, but then always kind of tie it back to something greater than myself, a purpose greater than myself. So, and I really owe that all to my upbringing. And, I say my mom, but kind of the extended village that raised me between all my aunts and uncles. They were all extremely impactful.
Amazing. I love that. Gator moms. Awesome. Well, so I'm assuming your answer is kind of similar. Swish, did you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, mom is definitely a big reason. And then I think for me also just having a very accomplished brother, all right? Like my brother, he did everything very fast, set the bar very high for me, especially like when I was entering debating grade 7, he had won the world competition in grade 12. So it's like,
wow,
thanks, buddy.
Okay.
Right. And so it's nice, but my Aanikh knows my brother really well. He's like one of the most humble people you'll meet. He doesn't like talking about himself a lot. He also, like, people growing up used to think that we would like not get along well because, we were always very competitive about, cricket or basketball or whatever, but like we were competitive with other people. We weren't necessarily as competitive with ourselves. Like we would have friendly wagers and competition, but like, I think people started to realize like, oh, like, Swish isn't actually jealous of his brother. He relishes his brother's success because he gets to talk to his brother every single day and get as much insight and help from him. And that's the way that I kind of viewed it, is that competitive kind of like feeling of like, I want to live up to my brother's name wasn't out of like jealousy. It was out of just like ambition. Like I wanted to be seen in a very equal, intelligent, whatever light.
Yeah.
And so that was nice to have as well. Just someone who would continue to kind of push you within your family.
I love that. I love that you're sharing about, your personal upbringings. And I know, I've actually had some interactions with your mom, and I've always seen that in you. I remember even commenting on that because just as a mother, of course, I'm like, wow, that's so nice. I hope my son is as, kind to me on his podcast interviews one day. I'm going to send this to him. Which I know he would be, but it is nice to hear. And I think that we overlook that sometimes. I think we, the development of humility and hard work and remembering where we came from and how to give back, all those things are certainly fostered in us through our parents or through our families, whoever looks after us. And I think that's important to identify. So I love that. And so thanks for sharing that. I think that, what I gather from you is that your internal motivation is, mostly around almost like competition, like a healthy competition. Do you think that that's where, you would say that's what your motivation is this sort of need to be competitive and to do really well and succeed on certain, succeed through competition?
Yeah, I mean, with surf in particular, I think, one is definitely that. Like, I think Aanikh and I both know, like, we've been, given an incredible opportunity, whether it's through luck or whether it's through hard work. I think it's a combination of both. But I think we have these gifts, we have this opportunity to do something really big, and it would just be a waste of kind of that talent and opportunity if we didn't work hard and try to push kind of towards our goal. I think secondly, both of us also feel like a very kind of core sense of mission now. Like we actually really believe what we're trying to do. Nice. And like, we just can kind of visualize the world where surf becomes a very big thing, where consumers are rewarded for their data. It's a far better world than we currently live in. And that's why we're so amped about it, because we can see it in our mind, but we're just constantly trying to push towards it.
I'll tell you something. I've sort of obviously been on the outskirts of following your career and life for a few years now. And I've seen that clarity, even just from the distance that I hold from you. I've seen that clarity for you. And then when I went on your website today, I actually felt it myself, because it had come from True Fan and now into surf. And I was like, wow, this is so much, like, I understood it immediately. And I was like, this is so clear. So even from my perspective as a consumer, I see it for you. So I think that's great. I think, that's really what we're all striving for, is trying to gain that clarity so we can move in that, that mission. So I love that. I think that's very important. Do you, when you kind of advise people, I'm sure you get asked this sort of thing all the time. Do you have tips for people that to help them find that clarity, to help them find that mission, that vision within themselves, so that they can, ultimately find success in what they're doing?
Aanikh?
I was going to defer to you first. Some incredible work with a lot of early stage companies recently. So I feel like I'll let you kick off, Swish, and then I can add any 2 cents afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, number one, I think it's just experimentation. right? Like for us, I wouldn't ever, like, people always say we pivoted, and I don't ever like that, because we never pivoted. We just evolved. And that's what I think you need to realize is, like, if you have an early idea, you need to be open to just learning more about what your customers are saying, what your team is saying, what your investors are saying, what the market generally that you're operating in, what's happening in it, where is it going? And that's why I love what we've done, is because, like, in our first year, we were very focused on a very small niche problem. Like, brands can find their top fans on social media. Okay, let's address that. And then once we did address that, we were able to move into, okay, let's help them find their competitors' fans, because they are really excited about competitive intelligence as an idea. Okay, now that they did that, where's the market going? Oh, well, we're moving away from third-party data. We're moving away from cookies. We're moving now to opt-in first-party data. Let's look at that. Let's try to figure out what that model could be. Oh, we got a really cool model with giveaways. What if we, instead of doing giveaways, maybe we rewarded people with a guaranteed prize through points? And that's how we ended up here. So it wasn't ever a pivot. It was more an evolution. And that, again, it comes down to experimentation and just constantly being obsessed about the problem you're solving, but to the extent of also understanding that there are other problems around the problem you're solving. And those problems are only going to come up from feedback from your team, investors, customers, etc. I don't know if you have anything else there to add.
Yeah, no, that's super. I think that's super well put. And just the basis of, like, you can't ever get too attached to anything. You know, Shauna, you mentioned that we were a True Fan. Like, we were a True Fan for a long time. I have hats and shirts and stuff from, you know, long time ago. And, you know, there wasn't a second where Swish and I were like, oh, we're not surf anymore. Like, once surf became an idea in our heads, we were full on that train. And there was no going back. There was no turning around. And I think as entrepreneurs, you have to just trust your gut. I think a lot of founders might be like, we kind of started with this, but now we've been doing it for 5 months and we've learned so much. We've learned more in the 5 months than we have in the last, you know, maybe 5 years or whatever. But, I don't want to change. Change is scary. How will people react? How will people we've talked to react? I would just try the change and just do it. Especially if you believe in it. If you believe in it as the founding team, and obviously you bounce it off people that you trust, you know, don't just Rambo it, but, you know, bounce it off people you trust. But if you have that faith and that belief, share it. And more often than not, people will realize that, hear it, be receptive to it, and ultimately be excited with you, which I think is super important.
Yeah, I mean, we've even had to do that with Haste and Hustle. I mean, when we first started, we were a sort of a sales and marketing conference, you know, and we, over time, we did exactly as you said, Swish, listen to the market, listen to, you know, figured out who our people were, and, you know, evolved into this platform to support entrepreneurs. And, you know, now I'm here and I'm like, I could never go back. And I don't regret where we started. I love that we started there and we figured it out, but you're right. It was an evolution. And I think that's, you know, an important distinction to make, because it's not necessarily a pivot. It's definitely just an evolution. So I love the way you put that. Thank you.
And the response to the pandemic, and, you know, that's changed where we operate entirely, which has opened up a completely different, well, not different locationally demographic, right? So honestly, amazing. So good listening to you guys talk about, like, the transition, the evolution between True Fan and Surf. Part of me, actually, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. One about what was something that, having gone through this change, and even just people you know, going through the change, and you've seen so many things, you've talked to so many different people, time and time again, you can probably get this question, but, like, what do you wish you could tell your younger self, even though you're still pretty young? You know, like, what do you think? Okay, I would tell myself this, like, 2 years ago, for either of you. What's something there that stands out?
2 years ago, oh man, like, please predict the pandemic.
I know, yeah.
Start a video conferencing website. I think for me, 2 years ago, 2 years ago was tough, because that, really is the start of the pandemic. Go ahead.
I feel like that's soon. Yeah, 2 years ago is shit. Yeah, it'd be very tactical.
And I actually think 2 years ago is when, like, Aanikh and I, like, were probably doing some of our, like we're doing some of our best work now, but I think that was when we, like, really picked up a lot of pieces and we're like, okay, we're running this idea of, like, moving the first party data, and we're going to be mission oriented business. So I think that was nothing I regret there. I think the one thing I would say, just back in the day, one thing I would constantly tell my younger self is to not sweat the small stuff. And what I mean by that is, like, I write this kind of year-end article every year for the business. And it's funny because every year the problems that we're worried about change like dramatically. Like, and we've even seen it on a quarterly basis. Like our kind of last thing at the end of 2021, we had a major issue among the product team that other team members started to talk about as well. And that's not really even a problem that we're mentioning anymore 2-3 months later, but we were really worried about it at the time. So my younger self constantly was worried about these small things, and I wasn't able to move forward from them that easily. I think now it's more of like, there's a lot of resiliency built up between Aanikh and I and the team because we've gone through so much, we've seen so much, that I think we're more likely now to say, okay, that's a problem, we'll fix it, but we'll move on, we'll get over it. In 5 months, we'll be laughing about this problem because we'll be on to the next.
Right.
But Aanikh, I don't know if you have something like
that lens of like understanding how you're going to manage something like that, just, you know, that awareness just gets stronger and stronger. And of course, as you said, that you've gone through it, so you kind of rely on the team and the systems and I guess the vision you're all driving towards. So yeah, not sweating. Okay, really cool. Aanikh, what's your kind of revelation?
I think like if we want to look back to younger Aanikh, I would just say like trust the process a bit. I feel like I don't want to blow smoke up Swish and I's head, but I feel like in the entrepreneurial community, the young entrepreneur community, I think we're some of the friendliest and supportive people. I think a lot of the young entrepreneur community, and I'm not even talking in Canada, like I've met some really great people in the States, but I think a lot of people view it as zero sum, wherein if other people raise or other people grow or other people get X brand to come on, you know, it removes that from the pie for everyone else. And I think Swish and I, thankfully, we don't have that mentality a lot. I think if anything, we're on the opposite. We're big cheerleaders for other people, genuinely, sometimes so much that people get caught off guard by it, which is kind of funny. But I think, you know, it's my younger self would maybe get caught up in that a lot and sometimes compare and contrast. And I think just trusting the process. Everyone's on their own life journey and different things happen at different times for people. There's ebbs and flows. So just trust the process, because if you feel like you're surrounding yourself with people that you want to be around, I think as long as that's the case, then just trust the process. That's definitely something I would tell my younger self a bit, is to just trust the process a bit more.
That's amazing. What you've both communicated are things that we've seen and heard, you know, and like to hear it come from you guys who have definitely gone through, you built something, you've reached great deals of success considering everything you've gone through, you know, to hear that, like that, I'm sure some people think of those as platitudes. You know what I mean? Some people definitely think of, okay, I've heard that, trust the process. Yeah, sure. Be patient, luck. Okay, whatever. But like realistically, it's so good for that message to come through from you guys, because we need to remember, but that's literally the truth. And like the key thing, continue being cheerleaders and work with people you enjoy, which is literally what I tell myself, you know, like SHAUNA and I, like we hang out, we talk, like, and then we're like, all right, let's talk about work now, because we're talking about anything and everything. We're friends, you know, and that makes us get through anything that happens. So totally cool. I appreciate that big time. Okay. So there's all these, I'm sure that young founders, as you're going out, you're doing things, you know, top 20 under 20, there's tons of misconceptions. People are probably saying, well, you know, Swish, you got to look out for this. Aanikh, you know, look out for this. You don't know yet. You don't have that life skill or whatever. So you're going to hit this, and, you know, just want to be there for you. Like, or like the whole, like, you got to move really, really fast. And like, now that you've done this with TrueFan, like with Surf, it's going to be this, like, there's all these misconceptions. Do you like from what you've seen and what you've gone through, do you align with any of these? Or have you been able to kind of like blinders on and kind of blow past them? You know, like, are those common misconceptions part of your journey? Did you experience some of them and like those stereotypical hangups as young founders?
Not too much for me. Like, I think Aanikh and I are people that, generally speaking, like, if we don't know something, we'll just be honest about it and just tell people we don't know whatever it is they're asking about or whatever they're inquiring on. I think our investors actually genuinely appreciate that, because we're very reasonable. Sometimes we're overly reasonable, where we're like, playing down our numbers or playing down our success with the business, and we're not necessarily amping them up too much. But for the most part, like, I think both of us realize that there's a very stark difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? Like, yes, Aanikh and I are young, which means we might not know everything about life. We're very cognizant of that. Actually, it excites us because I feel like if I had a button that gave me every piece of knowledge about life, it'd make life very boring for the next 15, 20 years. But at the same time, we know we're very knowledgeable about certain spaces, right? Like, there's no one better in my network about esports, for example, than Aanikh. Like, he knows absolutely everything. So like, I know for sure that he's incredibly knowledgeable about that. And that's what we try to do even when we raise money. We're trying to attract investors that realize we might not be the most wise people, but we're certainly knowledgeable about what we know and what we're excited about.
Dope.
Yeah, I think that's key. Sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Like, I think Swish put it very eloquently, and I think to what Swish said, I think is the misconception, is that a lot of young people think that they don't have knowledge or wisdom, or not. They tie the wisdom in with the knowledge. A lot of young people will be like, I know everything about electric vehicles. Like I've been doing it. I've been living it. Like, one of my good friends at Swish met recently, brilliant guy, Stanford electrical engineering. And I remember early on, like, he always used to be like, I don't really know that much. I don't really know that much. I don't really know that much. And to be fair, obviously in the the lexicon of all things electric vehicles, I'm sure he doesn't, there's so much to learn. But it was that recently seeing him, it was that change. He'd been working at a company now for 4 or 5 months, and like, just the confidence to talk about topics. And he always knew the same. I feel like he knew a lot of the same stuff. So I guess a misconception for young people is that idea that time wisdom means that they feel like they need to downplay their knowledge. Maybe that's the misconception. But I agree 1,000% with what Swish just articulated.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I think it's like really important to make that distinction between wisdom and knowledge, and actually feel the confidence to trust yourself and then go forward, trust the process, trust the team, believe in your idea, and build it with people that think the same way as you. So we like to kind of get us practical here, and I'll switch gears a little bit. And when you're answering this one, think about like whatever, but like, I guess the question is, what's the tool that you carry in your toolbox, no matter what project you're working on? Like, and this could be an actual tool that you're using, like a service or software or whatnot, or it could be a state of mind or whatnot. I don't know. It could be a way of interacting with peeps, but what's something that as you've been moving through, you're like, whoa, thank God this helped this situation time and time again. And it's something that you just kind of carry with you.
I think two things for me. One is an actual tool. The other one is more, again, maybe a mentality.
Yeah, I'd love to hear both. Yeah.
The first is Superhuman.
I saw that on your emails.
Great email software. It changes the way that I do email. I genuinely enjoy it now. I feel like I've hit inbox zero far more with Superhuman on than without it. I'm not paid, by the way, by Superhuman to say this. I'm not an investor or anything. I objectively like their product, and I think they built something that's great. The second is mentality wise. I like asking why a lot sometimes. I feel like sometimes in meetings when people put out, problems, I always like to kind of see it to like the logical extension of like, why is this important? Why is this important now? What happens if we don't act on it now, right? Like even today, like one of our team members brought up in a sync up a problem that they wanted addressed. And one of the questions that immediately popped in my head that articulated is like, is this a problem we have to kind of solve right now? Why? Right? And like constantly asking why, so that our team members start to think a little bit on a deeper lens and aren't just trying to, say that this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, we have to solve them all. And are able to prioritize things just by having a conversation with me. So I think kind of going down that why well, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I've seen that. I read about that in Tools of Titans. It was like why 3 times is where you, that's where you're able to start really thinking about things. You have to get there. So no, that's totally great.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 things. Number one is being in operations. I feel like I deal with every department almost every day and stuff that's coming up. So for me, a big thing is like, it's not necessarily, maybe it's a Kanban board or a flow board, but I have like a task list for myself of what's, what's kind of due, what's like, what am I doing and what's done. I recently, I think in the last 8 months, got really into it, and I found it's helped me organize what's going on and also prioritization of everything. So I think that's been really helpful as a tool. We use Notion, so I just have.
I was going to ask, is that Trello? Is that Notion? Where do you?
Yeah, it's on Notion, but I feel like the OG was the Trello board. Almost.
Yeah, it was. They've improved it a lot too. Like I've been using it lately, and I'm like, oh, this is a lot really changed. But
nice, that's sick. Yeah, we use Notion for a lot of internal docs, so it's nice because I can tag people and stuff in it. And then I guess the mentality is, I very much like to find root cause. I don't like to do symptom management. With my team, with our team, really. If a department head brings a problem to me, usually what they're speaking through is symptoms. And I'm like, okay, great. But I'm like, what's causing this? It's not like I don't want to know why you're having difficulty getting this done or what the challenges are. Maybe we can talk about that. But the first question I want to get to is like, what is really causing this? And oftentimes it's similar to, a little bit similar to what Swish said in terms of why. It's almost like just getting to understand the root for me is really, really important. I feel like in a business, there can be a root problem and it expands out into like this tree of issues. And if you're constantly solving all the branches and the leaves, you're never actually solving the root. So, it's almost like I forget what the animal Hercules Hydra.
Is it Hydra or Medusa?
Or something like Cerberus was a 3-headed dog. I think the Hydra was the one where cut the head off. 3 more take place.
Would grow back.
Yeah. I feel like that's a lot of sometimes running a business is like you solve a problem, but then 2 more pop up. So for me, I really like to try to get to the root cause of things. And it can be a bit jarring for people. People can kind of wonder, like they can feel like you're just dismissing what their problems are. But I think my team understands that, I'm a pretty caring person. I'm not trying to ignore them, and then as more and more I do it, I feel like they see the outcomes and the outcomes feel good. But for me, that's a big tip is just get to the root cause of the symptom. My girlfriend's graduating medical school in 2 months. And that's something that very different fields, but very similar in terms of at least how she's been learning to think is yes, you need to treat the symptoms as a doctor, but a lot of issues in our healthcare system are symptom treating and not root cause solving. So I think that's an interesting paradigm shift between entrepreneurship and the medical system that vastly different, but a lot of similarities in terms of how we're doing problem solving.
It's good management style. I mean, ultimately, I feel like we could probably translate that question and we could suddenly be in a relationship podcast, like, are we talking about dating? Are we all married? Because it's, ultimately true. And I think it's just good relationship management, good communication style, good. And, it obviously just makes sense to look for why things are happening. So you can prevent them, just as you said before, instead of treating a symptom, you're going after the cause and preventing it. So I think that's just great advice all around. I've always loved from, I met Swish first. So you're kind of like the OG in my mind. And then, then I met Aanikh and I was immediately like, this guy's incredible. And I've always been very impressed with how you've built out partnerships and built relationships. And this is obviously ties back into how communicative you are, both of you, and how you handle people, work with people. So I'd love to, and I think for me, I believe that strategic partnerships in general are just a huge amplifier of business. And, we work with other companies in a way that helps us grow. You both obviously have that, cheerleader mindset. So you're willing to support other companies and then therefore there's support back. But when you're specifically focusing on strategic partnerships that are going to work within your brand, for your brand, with your brand, what are you looking for and how do you employ, what are some strategies that you use to build those into your business?
Yeah, I think the 2 things we mainly look for, number one is definitely a fit on values. Just generally speaking, like, does that company that we are looking to work with, do they actually believe the mission that we are on in terms of an equitable data economy, or that privacy should be respected? Data ownership is something that is important and should be talked about more. And that's definitely one big fit that we look for with, even our reward partners, which is generally the partnerships that we have with channel partners. We look for some sort of fit. Like, does this brand actually believe the problem and the mission that we're trying to solve here? The second, I think, is on a strategic level, candidly, like, I try to look for organizations ideally that aren't so big where like we're kind of a speck in their ecosystem. I'm hoping that like we're working with partners that They're agile, they're quick, they don't have a lot of bureaucracy, they can get things done fast. If I have an idea 1 week, or if a partnerships manager has an idea 1 week, they can communicate it to that partner right away. Within a week or two, we can get something up and running, just to experiment and try something new. That's another thing, is just agility, because yeah, we do have some of the kind of bigger corporate partners, and those are great. But in terms of maximizing early value on a grassroots level, either for customers or users, those small experiments are going to be crucial for us to understand what works and what doesn't. And we can only really do that with smaller and more agile partners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I know that's similar for us too. I mean, we're always looking for people who can operate within our timelines quickly, be agile. And I think that, it's the challenge of being a smaller business owner, right? When you're growing and you're scaling up, it's hard to meet the demands and the timelines, the longer timelines of a large scale company. And so I totally agree. And so when you can focus on some of the smaller businesses or medium-sized businesses that can, lift you up from a closer range, then it just makes sense. And, operationally, it just works better. I completely agree. Aanikh, did you want to?
No. My thoughts on it at the end of the day really stem from the fact that I've learned so much from working with Swish in terms of how to manage relationships, partnerships in the business world. Like I don't know anyone that manages as many positive, healthy relationships as Swish does across LinkedIn, text, email, this and that. I've learned a tremendous amount and leverage that in my own across the board, whether it be, new people I've met and how to, foster that relationship, or how to rekindle maybe, a conversation that, I haven't, picked up in 7 to 8 months. I feel like I've definitely learned a lot from Swish in that regard. So whatever he said, I'd go with, because I've met and I've
adding on to that, I feel like I'm in a call with two people that are experts at that. Like SHAUNA and Swish literally like exemplify that, they're totally
I don't even want to that's nice of you to say. I would not put myself in Swish's category. I mean, I'm really good at being nice to people. Your ability to stay in touch and respond and all the things, I'm always just like, what the heck? It's amazing. Like I appreciate it really is. Yeah.
I appreciate that. But like, I think, again, I think both of us understand, like, and the root of networking really is about providing people value, right? And the relationships that I value the most are individuals who took a chance on me, which is why, SHAUNA, for example, for you, like how nice you've been to me since I was 18, 19 years old, a guest at HASTE and Hustle, and then obviously inviting me to speak at a very young age as well. Like, I really appreciate that level of trust and kind of what you saw within our generation, and the fact that you've been just so nice and resourceful, always willing to help, always willing to promote stuff we're doing. That's what means the most. Like I never asked for any of that stuff. It was more of just stuff that I think you provided, and the value that you've given is obviously, like in some way made it so that this relationship has stayed incredibly strong. So that's I think what comes down to like the root of relationships and how to build them is just providing value to people, especially when they're not asking for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, when I look at it back the other way, because I felt like I got so much value back. So it's, it's a give and take situation. And I think for me, when I first, met you, it was just sort of like random that day. And at HASTE and Hustle, I was taking you, I think, back to meet Gary because he was waiting. And, then we got chatting, and then obviously, just sort of grew from there. But it's so interesting to see how, some people can be very dismissive about those sorts of things, whereas I've always been very curious. Like I stay very connected to a lot of the people that have attended my events. And it's funny because the other day when we were working on, creating a list for this community feature that we're doing, it was sort of like, okay, who has, been a part of this event from the get-go, 2017, it's been 5 years, who's been there, and who's sort of achieved some great level of success on, in business or life or whatever. And just like, off the top of my head, I could think of 20 people without even like trying, who have, done really well and been integrated into different things. And it was really interesting to me to see that. And I think, when I look at that, I'm like, how have we all given back to each other? And there's been this, give and take. So it's been pretty cool. That's just my little happy moment.
Love it. It's great.
A true community builder.
Yeah, I try. Well, I would love to just, I have just a couple more questions. I know that we're kind of getting deep into, partnerships. I think people forget about what the value is of a good partnership, why we partner with other companies, what the value is in this give and take, and how that support works from a stakeholder perspective. And maybe, almost like our partnership isn't really like a formal partnership, but I'm talking more along the lines of like formal partnerships that are, companies that are integrated into your business. I'd love for you to just expand a little bit on why that's valuable and how that works to build a business.
Sure, Aanikh.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to answer this type of question. I think the most immediate thing that comes to me, or an example, was during the pandemic, we were able to partner with Shopify, and I think Shopify did a really great job here. And they said, hey, we want to empower, small business owners to go from brick and mortar to online. And we want to work with people, and hey, we're throwing out a, partner with us. And I think that was really cool because they kind of made a smaller, team that was kind of managing it. It wasn't the general Shopify partnerships person, but there was a, point of contact for this initiative. And, we were able to get in through someone Swish had known and some of the, connections there. And we were a part of a large group with, it was like Shopify and Google, but there was also smaller businesses like, ourselves and some other, startups in the Canadian ecosystem. And I think that was really healthy. And I think Shopify was really happy because potential merchants or their merchants got access to lots of resources and even software. And for us, it was great because we got to, work with a large company that had the bandwidth and the power to kind of move that initial mountain, but then, leave space for the smaller businesses to be able to, plant their stake in the grass, so to speak. They didn't say, hey, we're Shopify, we do everything. So, hey, if you want to move from brick and mortar to e-commerce, just go to Shopify. Don't talk to anyone else. Don't think about anyone else. Don't look at anyone else. It was really cool. They're like, well, there's a lot of stuff that's got to be a part of your ecosystem. There's us, there's this, there's that. So that was really cool. And I think that to me is a really good example of a partnership where both parties had a healthy outcome. Whether it was the smaller companies, the middle companies, and the larger company. I think whether you're a smaller company that's looking for partners with bigger companies, or you're a bigger company that's saying, hey, how can we work with young, innovative companies that are doing really cool stuff in fields, is be very specific about it. Like with anything in life, a hyper general partnership doesn't really accomplish much. But if there's a very specific goal, end game, desire, a vision, and there's very clear, tangible steps on how you get there, that's when partnerships, find the most success. So I think that, to me, that example with Shopify, Digital Main Street, Google Canada, a bunch of other companies that were part of that group, to me is a really good example of how I saw partnerships succeed from all stakeholders' side.
I love that. I've seen a really cool shift in the way that businesses operate, because I think, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you had these big corporations and you had these very rigid rules, and these, corporate America or corporate Canada, whatever it looked like, was very rigid in how they operated outside of their own doors. And now you've got all these big companies that have grown very quickly. They have these, younger founders who have, kind of come up the ranks, and they're allowing this new sort of mindset around abundance and sharing and cooperation and collaboration. And these are all sort of newer, I think, ways that business is being done in large scale businesses. So it's sort of nice to see. I love that example from Shopify, because I do see them as a leader in that way. I've seen that a few times with them, and so it's sort of a nice shift. I like to see that that's kind of happening, and I think it's a little bit of a shock to the system of typical corporations, but it's good. And I think it's so important to recognize that partnerships and collaboration are truly what strengthen businesses, I believe. So
yeah, it's funny because I see that literally everywhere, and where I hang out online, and me looking, well, everything Haste and Hustle, we operate like that for sure. And then I think about all the Web3 initiatives and all the NFT projects, and crypto is totally like, we want to smash the paradigms, we're open like that. And the partnerships and collaborations between some of the major projects, like, of course, we can see that between like Bored Ape, Yacht Club, and Adidas and whatnot. But then on any level, like on all the Discords that we're in and whatnot, Twitter, there's just an explosion of like promote without like shamelessly shilling. And I just feel like anyone that I talk to, it just, the kind of zero-sum game just doesn't seem to be in the head anymore, anyone's head anymore. And I think it's really cool because I'm seeing that like everywhere. So yeah, cool. I think the partnership deal and being really focused and specific about what you're looking for, I think those are really important things for listeners to hear, guys.
Yeah. It sort of ties right back to our name. Gotta be tactical. Gambit. All right. So I'd love for you now just to, we're sort of wrapping up a little bit before we get to our last three sort of signature questions that we like to have fun with. I'd love for you to tell our audience about Surf and how they can access it and all the good things that are going on there.
Sure. Yeah. On the kind of vision standpoint, what we're trying to do at Surf is build what we call an equitable data economy, a place where people can finally be rewarded for the data that they've been sharing for over a decade to Facebook or Amazon or Google. You can finally share data in a fun, transparent, rewarding experience where you get points. You can use those points for discounts and rewards from some of the popular brands on the internet. And brands, on the other hand, will get anonymized data that allows them to obviously understand user behavior on the internet a lot better in a cookieless world. So if you want to download Surf as a consumer, feel free to check out the extension. You can download the extension on every major web browser, but just go to joinsurf.com and you'll be able to download it there. And you get, I think, $5 for just signing up in points. So no, it's free. I think it's a pretty neat incentive to just go and try it out, see if you like it. And if you want to keep it downloaded, we obviously would love that.
And I think since last time we talked, I mentioned where I was in my point standing, and I haven't stopped using the internet. So yeah, I'm at gift card level. I'm saving it though. I'm saving it. Yeah.
I love it. Are you working for I know there's a couple of people working for the PS5 and Xbox. So
in all honesty, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this is feasible. I'm at home all the time. Like, let's do this. Like, there's really something to be said about the anonymity of it. And of course about feeling like I have some sort of sense of control. It's a big deal. We are thinking about that, which is why, like, regardless of whether I was able to talk to you two about this, I'd still be like, this is cool. So yeah,
that means a lot. No, thank you.
I joined it today, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so late into the game. I just couldn't put that there.
It's okay. All good. You didn't even have to share that, and you did. I really appreciate that, Shauna.
I appreciate
Thank
that,
you.
Exactly. You're part of the community now. We don't care when you sign up.
That's so funny.
But we're gonna share it out with the community. Aanikh, did you want to share a little bit?
No, I think Swish hit the nail on the head. We drink from the same Kool-Aid when it comes to what we talk about, and I think fundamentally it just comes down to the fact that technology has always been predicated upon how to extract the most value. I think fundamentally a lot of humanity has been predicated upon how to extract the most value. And I think what we've realized when we review back on history is that that's usually not the best way, the most ethical way, the most humane way to ever do things. So I think, again, I'm not saying that, we're a white knight by any means, but I think what we're trying to do with Surf is just take a step to show people that people are making a lot of money off your data. And if you're comfortable sharing, which vast majority of people are, specifically younger people who know that, what they're sharing is not, anything to be scared of, then, we just want to be a partner in helping you feel rewarded and safe and secure in that pursuit. So I think that's just what we're excited about. And Google doesn't need to make what is it, like Apple, how much money is on Apple's balance sheet? Like $11 trillion or something? I don't know. Right?
Let's share it around.
That doesn't need to be the case. Exactly. Let's share it. Let's have people be able to dip into that pool a little bit.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think it speaks right to my, heart, because I always tell everyone that I'm a humanitarian first and a business person second. And so I love it when I get to align and work with businesses that have a social impact. And in this is, it's cool. It's great that you can, flip the coin on data and allow, instead of people just sort of not knowing what's happening and feeling a bit nervous about it and not getting any value, now you're like, giving them, you're switching the paradigm. And I love that. So I think it's great. Awesome. Well, guys, I feel like I could talk to you forever and ever, but I know you're very busy. And so we will wrap this up. But before we go, we have our signature questions. I'll let DEVON start us off. We have 3 questions, and I'll let each of you answer each of them.
Yeah, I always love these questions. Okay. So for each of you guys, who would you love to have dinner with, dead or alive? Yeah, if you could.
I mean, Aanikh, but I miss him. He's in Vancouver side.
Oh man,
I think Barack Obama for me. Barack Obama would be
amazing.
Solid.
Aanikh.
Aanikh, are you going to say Swish and then have a choice?
Yeah, I know. I feel like you have to say that,
right?
Absolutely, my guy Swish. As long as we can play some games after, play some video games after.
Nice.
I don't know. This is actually a really tough question. One of my biggest inspirations growing up was Martin Luther King Jr., to be honest, and the speaking aspect of it. I used to do a lot of public speaking, and the most captivating speaker individual, I think, ever, one of them at least. So that would be cool. That would be surreal, to be honest. So probably that. Yeah.
That would be incredible. I love both your answers. I want to take them on as my own. But feel free to say SHAUNA next time. Just kidding. All right. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing, do you think?
This is funny. So I guess like 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I'd probably be going to law school and being a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if you ask me the question now, I'd be like fully into sim racing and just trying to become some sort of driver, even though I don't even have a driver's license, but it is what it is.
I was gonna say,
that would probably be something.
But racing for Swish.
Yeah.
So good at it.
It's hilarious. I feel really out of the loop because I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. It's like video game racing, but
okay.
Esports champions, yeah.
All right.
For me, gaming, it's something in gaming and esports. Super passionate about the space, love the space. So something in that field.
That's
cool.
I love it.
Okay, final question. Another one of our favorites. We can have more than one favorite. If you could give our listeners, founders, any one piece of advice, what would that be?
For me, I think it's actually very similar to what Aanikh mentioned before around not comparing kind of your life to others on social media. I think it's easier said than done. I think I sometimes slip back into that mode as well, where I'm like having a really tough day and looking at my stories and seeing someone on a beach and like just going, what the hell? And I know it's hard to do that, but feel free to disconnect, delete the app, take social media detoxes, take a break. And overall, just remind yourself, people mainly post kind of a very blip, like 1% of what their life actually is. And it's good to kind of realize that and just know that you are where you're supposed to be. That's number one thing. Constantly go to bed thinking too.
That's beautiful.
That's beautiful. Yeah. What I have is really just an extension of what Swish is. I think one of the things that was a really powerful statement that I learned about happiness and progress was this idea that if you zoom in, oftentimes you experience your current emotions, which is important, but you had a tough day and then you had a couple tough days in a week. Maybe you had one bad week in a month. I feel like as humanity, human nature, I've read so many psychology books, like we always tend to focus on the small negative thing. Tristan Harris actually talks about how social media companies are built on this paradigm that controversial statements get more responses from people and people obsess over negative comments more, i.e. celebrities can get 1 million likes, but 5 negative comments, and that's the only thing that they'll talk about on an interview potentially. Powerful thing for me and for listeners is essentially just look back, like try to take it as like an XY axis and just zoom out and say, if the x-axis is your life timeline and your y-axis is whatever you want to measure, happiness, success, fitness goals, who knows, painting, ability to paint beautiful pictures, whatever it may be, just zoom out. And just as long as over time it's going up in the upward direction, that's what matters. Because I feel like it's easy to have a bad week and then catastrophize. But if you scale out, that might be a bad week in a year that's been incredible. And I think that ties into what Swish said. Your goals shouldn't be about what you see other people doing in their week or their month or their year, but the own goals you set for yourself. And having that zoom out, I think, has been really helpful for me in a lot of my journeys in life towards progress, because everyone has bad weeks. People have bad months. People even have bad years.
Yep.
Right. But if you zoom out and you say, wow, like the last 3 years, 3 weeks, 3 days have actually been really great, I think it helps kind of put you in the right mind space.
Love that.
Okay.
I will send you my bill for this therapy session, or you can send me your bill. Sorry, for this therapy session.
I love the alignment between those two responses. No,
Me too.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That's great. Thank you, guys.
Guys, it's been such a pleasure. It's always so nice to speak to both of you, and I look forward to doing it again sometime. And I'm so excited about all your success. We will put in the show notes where people can find you, and not physically, but online. And we encourage people to join Surf. And so thank you for joining us today. Thank you to all of our listeners for helping us come and get tactical. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.